What's up, guys? This is Carroll from MyMMAnews.com and Carroll's Corner MMA podcast. I'm joined by Greg Melia, who's be fighting on ACC's September 22nd fight card. Greg, thanks for joining me.
You're very welcome, man. Anything to help.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about your fight coming up and your opponent.
So I actually did watch one of his fights. I was scheduled to fight someone that he fought, Yorick Anderson, who's a really, really great stand fighter. And his last fight happened to be against my opponent. So I watched that fight, which Yorick actually won that fight.
Mm-hmm.
But my guy, he did pretty well in there. I know he's a good stand-up fighter. I know he knows I'm a good stand-up fighter. So I don't think there's going to be any trickery. I don't think either one of us is going to be looking to try to take each other down. Not saying that that's not going to happen, but I think there's going to be some fireworks in there.
Awesome. Now, I do understand that you've done some kickboxing fights as well and coming over now doing MMA as well. Do you find any difference in your training when you do one sport to the other, or is it pretty much along the same lines?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely work out the body differently. It's a different type of cardio, when you're hitting the bag and hitting pads compared to grappling. They're two completely different cardios. So you need to train both in order to have both cardios.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the third style of fighting in the cage, and that's up against the cage. That wrestling up against cage is something different than jiu-jitsu, and it's also something different than the Muay Thai and the kickboxing. So making sure that you're getting all three of those, that's the key right there.
Tell us what gym you're fighting out of and who are some of your training partners.
So I train at a 914 training center, and that's located in Scarsdale, New York. And the main coach for MMA is Adam Carlisle. Okay. And he trained out of Hawaii under BJ Penn. He had an undefeated amateur career and was the champ out in Hawaii. Then he went pro, still an undefeated pro. But his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is top notch, and his MMA is even better than his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So the way I look at it is I have the stand fighting covered, and having him guide me through this training camp, I'm feeling very confident.
Awesome. And you got the fight's just a little bit about a month away right now. Take us through your last bit of training camp. What are you going to do? Are you going to add anything, remove anything? And how's weight cut going?
Well, as we get closer to the fight, the diet tightens up. The cardio gets more intense. But also, as we get closer to the fight, the sparring sessions become less and less. The grappling sessions become less and less. You're just trying to avoid injury. No fighter really goes into a fight healthy. It's a very rare thing. There's something that's always nagging. So eliminating the hard sparring closer to the fight, eliminating the hard rolling closer to the fight, just to get rid of injury. That's pretty much it. But the schedule stays consistent. The running, the grappling, the pad work, the bag work, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Tell me why you do this instead of, say, doing like a traditional 9-to-5 job. Like, what motivates you to keep coming back and getting in there and getting punched in the face, punching someone else in the face?
It's funny. I was actually just watching the podcast with Kevin Ross, and he said, back when he started doing it, it was all out of love. There was no money in the sport, and everyone that trained and did it is because of love. And he said it has changed, but I feel that, it has changed, but not so much. I feel myself and most of the guys out there, they do this because they love it. Not to say that we can't do a 9-to-5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, compared to what we do, I think that is not boring, but because I don't want to downplay a 9-to-5 because, that's what makes the world go around. But it's just different than what we do. And, if we could do something that we love and make money at the same time and still be able to compete, I just feel like that's what I prefer to do. And, so it's all just love.
Awesome, man. Take us through some of your short-term goals, long-term goals. How many fights do you want to fight within the year? And do you have a timetable to turn pro?
This fight, I believe, is my third of the year. And then I'm planning to fight again in October and then again in November. So 5 fights this year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, then next year, at the end of this year in October, I'm turning 33, so I'm kind of getting up there in age. But I mainly do it just because I love it. I'm not.
Hmm.
It's not about money or fame or anything like that. I could care less about that. I just love to compete, and I just want to try to get as many fights in. Until Father Time, checks me out.
That's awesome. Now,
Yeah.
you're talking about doing it for the love of the game and the love of the sport. What do you do for work, and what do you do to pay the bills and sponsorships, stuff like that?
So me and my cousin actually own 914 Training Center.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big facility, close to 5,000 feet.
Oh wow.
We have a lot of members, and we have the Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, but we also have Krav Maga that we teach here, kids programs, fitness programs. So it's a really well-rounded facility, and getting this place to its full potential is the main goal
Hmm.
for now. And then once we reach that, possibly a second location. So
Awesome.
business wise, that's what I want.
Awesome. Good for you. Now,
Right?
I'm curious about the Krav Maga because that's something you don't normally see in, like, I guess you could say a traditional mixed martial arts gym.
Yeah.
What are the differences between it, and what are the, I guess, advantages of having that in your gym?
So the advantages, a lot of people, specifically older people, late 30s, in their 40s, they don't really want to get down on the ground and do
Hmm.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or do MMA or even Muay Thai for that matter because they don't really want to get hit. So self-defense is a good thing for them. It's a good alternative. So it keeps them safe. It's very easy to learn. It's good for men and women since the whole system was made for the Israeli military.
Hmm.
And if you were born in Israel, you have to serve. So it has to be something quick to learn. Men and women could do it based off natural instincts. So it's very easy for people to learn and actually see progress in a very short amount of time. But it's blowing up pretty big across the country. So I guess capitalizing on that, people are looking for it. So it's smart to have it. And myself and one of my trainers, Dan White, being linked up with Krav Maga International, which is the organization that's out in Israel, being linked up with
Hmm.
them. They're the most authentic Krav Maga organization in the world. So being linked up with them, it's great for the students in here. It's great for the community. And it's good to not be stuck in the MMA, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mentality.
Hmm. That's awesome. Now, being that you're an instructor slash teacher and fighter, how much does coaching and teaching help your game when it comes to actually fighting yourself?
It's funny. I obviously do more kickboxing and Muay Thai,
Hmm.
and teaching it's not the same as training, but it keeps you mentally sharp. So if you don't do anything, if you don't physically do something for a while and you don't mentally do it for a while, you're gonna completely forget about it. But if you're constantly doing it mentally, it never really leaves your body. Then when you go back and you start training, you have a little bit of rust, but you don't have to relearn anything. So
Hmm.
that's what I love about teaching, and you're always learning when you're teaching. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai. I feel like it just makes your technique sharper, and it keeps you learning.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. I definitely think being able to instruct and, like you said, keep the mental edge is important.
Yeah,
Fights coming up soon. You're talking about weight and diet getting stricter. Is weight
yeah.
issue cutting ever an issue for you at all?
Just my last fight because my last fight I had to get down to 149, and I overshot it. I got down to 146,
Oh.
and I was a little disappointed in myself because that's never happened. I'm usually on the money, but then I went and took a shower because you're sweaty and you're disgusting,
Hmm.
and I stayed in the shower and I was relaxing, and the water felt really good, and my body actually absorbed close to about 5 pounds. And then when I went to go weigh in, I was 2 pounds over.
Oh,
So
geez.
then I had to re-lose that 2 pounds, and that was the worst weight cut I ever had to do. But of course, I made the weight 149. So the night of the fight, the next day, I swelled back up. I was 167. Because I'm a big believer of cutting the weight and then putting the weight back on and being as big and as strong as possible in the fight. But that's not going to happen this time. I'm going to drop down to the weight, make the weight first time, not do it a second time, and probably blow back up for the fight itself.
And you're fighting at 155 for this fight, right?
Yes. So the lightest I've ever gone was 147. I've actually done that twice. So one more pound, I don't really think should be a big deal. I hope.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. You have any sponsors that are helping you for the fight, or I should say recognize? You want to recognize family support?
Well, without my cousin Marty, he was the one that really came to me and helped me get the dream of owning my own gym and making this all come true. So a big shout out to him. Big shout out to my father and my sister. They're like my biggest fans. My girlfriend Vicky. Other than that, all the students and my training partners and all the coaches that put their time in for me day in and day out to try to make me better. And a big shout out to Tom and ACC and Eugene Perez over there for taking me up and letting me fight. And I'm going to try my hardest to give them a good performance and give their crowd a big performance.
Awesome. And one last question before we wrap it up.
Sure.
What's one thing about you that nobody knows but you'd like to share with everyone?
Ooh. Well, this is for my opponents out there. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. And the best trick the MMA fighter ever pulled was convincing his opponent he didn't know jiu-jitsu. So don't get caught in that. I do know jiu-jitsu. I do know how to wrestle. I am a complete fighter.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to watching the fight as well as calling it on the broadcast.
Thank you,
and so people can follow you. How can they find you on social media?
So on Facebook, it's 914 Training Center. That's the school, and we post everything on there. And on Instagram, it's the same thing, 914 Training Center. And all the news, all the highlights, everything that we do, we post right up on there. And it's very easy to find us on the social media.
Awesome. Well, Greg, I appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck on the 22nd. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Anytime for you guys, man.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too, brother. I'll see you at the fight.
Yes. Good luck.
Bye.